everybody. It is just about 1 o'clock on Tuesday. For some reason, all day I keep thinking it's Wednesday, but it's Tuesday. And we are reading chapters 21 and 22 today of WarMage Unexpected. And this Friday, instead of reading, we will have our second pizza Zoom and bring your lunch. 5 lucky fans will win a pizza delivered to their door, and all the rest of us can bring our lunch. So if you can join us, it's 1 p.m. Central Time, which is right now. Whatever time it is where you are right now, this is when it is. Hello, Grace, and hello, Diane, and Nancy, and Mike. So today we're going to read WarMage Unexpected, chapter 21 and 22. As the lunches progress, maybe we can have some surprise visitors come in too, but for now, we're just gonna have a good time having lunch together. And this way too, you get to know your fellow fans and you can ask me questions and we can see each other and all chat. And like I said, 5 lucky fans will win their own pizza delivered to their door. So the weather here, it was hot up to about, hi Diane, it was about up to 100 for a few days, and suddenly it got cold. Lois Lane is once again behind us, keeping track of anyone walking by the window. So she will keep the ground safe for everyone. And she may have some commentary during the reading. Leela is in her usual spot on the couch. She may join us if Lois barks loud enough, because Leela doesn't want to miss anything. Hope you all are doing well, and that sheltering in place or social distancing or whatever you're choosing to do is going well. Stay safe, everyone. I kind of like you all. So let's get started with chapter 21. Grace probably started the watch party. If you miss chapters, you can always find them on the YouTube channel. And keep writing me. I do write you back. So there, that's Lois. Chapter 21. Edward shuffled his feet in the dirt, kicking up dust into the night air. Small clouds illuminated in the glow of the small torch mounted next to the door of his cabin. Ugh, can't take too many more days like this one. Hey, Ed. Deacon walked past, slapping him on the back. Nice work today. Edward turned and leaned his left shoulder against the splintered wooden door, resting the side of his head against it. The sharp ends of a few cracks in the wood poked his scalp, but he was too tired to notice. Deke, this ain't what I signed up for. I'm a harvester. I ain't supposed to be scrubbing goat shit out of stalls. My boots are going to stink for at least a week. Deacon stopped walking and pivoted on his heels, sauntering over to Edward's side. I know, today was a rough one, but we're down a man. We all have to pitch in and cover Isaac's workload. Edward groaned. Shit, Isaac's been gone long enough. When is the old man going to go out and hire somebody? Is he waiting for Isaac to come back or something? Sniffing the air, Deacon stared off into the distance. No, he knows. Connor's not stupid. Look, we're all trying to get by right now. There's a shortage. Fellas leaving for parts unknown all over the city. You know the Bryson Ranch? Furrowing his brow, Edward blinked his heavy eyelids slowly, wishing Deacon would just let him go to sleep. Yeah, southwest side of the kingdom outside the wall, right? Deacon held up 2 fingers. They have 2 move out in one night, and they pay really well over there, from what I've heard. That's a cake gig. I've heard that. Guys don't leave there. They just work there till they die. Deacon cocked an eyebrow. Exactly. I know what you're trying to do. Don't scare me. We're safe in here. No rogue armies can get to us in here. No band of thieves. Edward pushed up onto both feet again and pulled open his cabin door. I better get some sleep before we got to do this all again. Night. Night, Deacon sighed. Just keep an eye out, you know? Yeah, Edward muttered to himself as he stepped into his cabin and sank into his bed. He unleashed a loud groan while he stretched out every aching muscle in his body at once. He wiped the sweat off his brow. It's a job, Ed. Not everyone gets one. Be thankful for that. Sleep overtook him, and within minutes he was snoring. An hour into the night, a loud rumble shook his cabin. It gently woke him, and he opened one eye, looking around. All he saw was the inside of his shack, the hooks on the wall holding his few outfits, the bench by the door under the light switch, and his dirty clothes spread wall to wall on the floor. Must have been a dream. He closed his eyes again, and rolled over to go back to sleep. The second rumble was much more violent. His bed trembled, the windows rattled to the point of cracking. Edward's eyes popped open and he sat up straight in his bed, gripping the sheets underneath him as he bounced wildly around the room, the furniture moving and shifting. Across the room, a pair of muddy jeans fell off a hook on the wall and crumpled onto the floor. His tools jingled and shifted, sliding everywhere. Edward held his breath, trying not to scream. Then, as quickly as it started, the rumbling stopped. Dust still hung in the air everywhere, floating back down to settle on everything in its new place. Holy shit! He jumped out of bed and ran for the door, shoving his feet frantically into his dirty work boots and running out into the cold of the night. The cold air gave him a rush as it hit the bare skin of his legs, but he was too panicked to notice anything. He ran back to the cabin and tried closing the door, but it was now slightly crooked and wouldn't close all the way. He opened the door wide to take a look, gazing out over the ranch. A chill went down his spine and he froze in place. The rest of the ranch was completely intact. Edward had expected to see a disaster area after the ground shook like that. The barns looked exactly the same. The fencing hadn't budged, and all the other houses looked fine. He stepped back and looked at his cabin leaning significantly to the right. It appeared ready to fall down if a strong enough gust of wind blew through. Confused, Edward jogged to the cabin next door and pounded on it. After a few seconds without a response, he knocked again. "All right." all right. Henry called out from the inside. "Just hang on." He whipped open the door with jeans unbuttoned, one eye closed. "Ed, what the hell, man? Put some damn clothes on." "How were you sleeping after that?" "After what? You're knocking?" "I'm not. Neither is Mick. Now we're both up and pissed." Edward looked up at the cabin. "How is your place still so intact?" "I haven't felt the ground shake like that in years." Henry rubbed his eyes. Ed, what are you talking about?" "The earthquake." "What earthquake?" "Oh, give me a break. There's no way you guys slept through that." Henry stepped out of the cabin and closed the door, looking out at the rest of the ranch. "Ed, there was no earthquake. Look around you. There'd be damage if there was an earthquake. Maybe you just had a bad dream or something." "No," Edward shouted. "That's not it. It wasn't a dream. I felt the earth shaking violently. Stuff was falling in my cabin. Come look." Henry looked at him as though he was losing his mind. "Go back to bed, Edward. I think you hit the shine too much tonight." "Damn it, I haven't been drinking." Henry turned around to head back into his cabin. "You'll feel better in the morning." Left standing alone in the cold with no pants on, Edward shivered. Am I losing my mind? Nobody else felt that? He looked at the main house, still dark. The old man would have come out and checked on us. Maybe it really was a dream. Edward walked back to his cabin and went inside, doing his best to pull the door shut behind him. He tried to shake the fact that the door no longer lined up with the door frame. He picked up the jeans that fell on the floor and hung them back on the hook. Then he kicked off his boots and crawled back into bed. He finally began to drift off to sleep once again, just as he heard the rumbling. But this time, he attempted to ignore it. "I need to drink more. Your mind's playing tricks on you. Don't go crazy." The rumbling grew stronger and his windows rattled. Edward squeezed his eyes shut, trying to pass it off as a dream still. A loud crack came from the far wall of the cabin. Edward's eyes snapped open and he saw the crack widen in the wall. Crack. Where is that coming from? He turned around in horror and looked behind his bed. Dear Almighty, what the hell is happening? The crack was spreading behind his bed. A large black tentacle lined with tiny pincers smashed its way through the wooden floorboards, sending splintered wood into the air and showering them with sawdust. The high-pitched whine of 1,000 cicadas filled the air. "No!" The word gurgled in his throat. Edward screamed again in disbelief and pushed himself up to the head of the bed, tucking in his legs away from the tentacle. He sat on top of his pillow, peering into a hole that was dug underneath the wood. "Pit to hell," he muttered, fear tightening his throat. The rumbling stopped and Edward looked frantically around the room. Dang, isn't somebody coming to check on me? He leaned over the foot of his bed, squinting to see if he could make out even a shadow of a figure. Nothing. He turned his shoulder, about to make a play for the door, and looked back down into the hole. He caught sight of 2 glowing red eyes in the pitch black, surrounded by tentacles roiling in the darkness. Edward opened his mouth to scream, silenced by a tentacle that shot out and wrapped around his throat, squeezing tight. Immediately, his face turned purple while he gasped for breath. 4 arms crawled out of the hole, 2 with rotating pincers that came together in a crescent shape, spinning faster, chopping away at the edges of the hole. The other 2 with dark green webbed hands the color of rotting moss that reached out for Edward. The ranch hand attempted to crawl away on the bed, clawing at the tentacle around his neck, the pincers digging into Edward's flesh, but nothing seemed to bother it. The monster's grip was too tight. Another tentacle whipped out of the darkness, slithering quickly around his right leg and started to pull as the hands reached out, waiting to embrace him. Droplets of blood appeared in rivulets down his leg. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? Edward couldn't breathe, and he was being dragged toward the pit he had been staring into moments earlier. He grabbed frantically at the sheets on the bed to try and get some kind of leverage. His vision blurred and his mind started to fog as he let go and clawed at the tentacles in an attempt to loosen his grip. Nothing was working. The tentacles pulled on his legs, sliding him across the bed. He gripped the rail of his bed and was surprised to see the hole that opened up in the floor was big enough to fit the bed, too. Suddenly, the foot of the bed tipped downward, throwing him off balance and releasing his grip on the sheets, knocking over a lantern. Oil spilled everywhere, seeping along the floorboards. The tentacle gave a sharp tug, and the legs of the bed scraped and creaked, sparking along the floor and mixing with the residue of acid left behind by the creature, igniting the oil. Edward wanted so badly to scream, but with his windpipe closed off, he could only hope that someone could hear the commotion. No help came as flames danced low along the ground, following the path of the fuel, and the residue quickly igniting the old dry wood of the cabin. Edward held onto the foot of his bed even as the creature pulled him into the deep pit and the flames grew closer. He dragged his fingernails, leaving scratch marks every step of the way. His head and arms were the last to go in, a look of resignation on his face. The dirt and soil in the ground began to swirl underneath the cabin. The cabin walls shook as if the entire dwelling would be devoured as well. Just as quickly, the whirlpool grew still, and the ground returned to normal as the flames grew and the walls of the cabin crashed inward, covering the hole. The next morning, Raven went out to the ranch to feed the goats just as the sun rose. She walked past Edward's cabin and stood in front of the pile of ashes and pieces of charred metal. It was all that remained. Henry came and stood by her side. What happened here? Where's Edward? Poor Edward. I think he had too much to drink last night. Must have knocked over his lantern. Terrible way to go. Don't stand here and stare at it. You mean he's under that rubble? Dig him out. We will, Raven. We'll make sure to get him out. It's going to take a little time, and there's nothing to be done for him now. Take care of the animals. By the time you get home tonight, this will be cleaned up. I promise. He shook his head. Get a move on now. Nothing more to learn here. Raven glanced back over her sore shoulder as she walked away, wondering anyway. What more was there to know? All right, on to chapter 22. Like I said, I hope everyone's having a good day. Hello, Diane. Hello, Grace. Hello, Mike and Nancy, who are probably all here. And like I said, Friday at 1 p.m. Central Time, it's going to be pizza and Zoom. Bring your lunch. That way we can see everybody and we can chat and you can ask questions. You can get to know each other. 5 lucky fans will win a pizza delivered to their door. I'll announce on Facebook Friday morning which 5 it was that won. So keep an eye out. Hi, Mike. And I hope I see Mike. I know Diane can't make it this Friday, but I hope I see you, Mike. And we had a lot of fun last Friday, so we're going to be doing it every Friday. On to chapter 22. An exhausted Raven stood between Leander and a makeshift wooden wall built on the outskirts of the Moss Dragon Ranch. The late afternoon sun hung in the sky just over her shoulder. William was off to the left, hanging from the top of the test course with his legs wrapped around the iron bars, trying to tie one of the rings to the roof. I'm not sure I understand why this is so hard, Raven shouted. William grunted, the blood rushing to his head. It's about control. He can do anything, but he has to do it on command. Start with the wall there. That way, every time you fail, you can set up the damn thing and I don't have to rebuild the entire test course. Listen, Raven said to Leander, we don't have time to keep doing this. You've knocked this wall down repeatedly tonight. You need to be able to take directions. If you can't take directions, that's it, right? You're done. You're only interested in me as a familiar. Leander let out a baleful cry, making Raven cover her ears. She waited for the returning echo, and it eventually came. She pursed her lips for a moment, the words stinging. That's why I was here, she said softly. She held her breath and let it go in a rush. Her voice came out stronger. I can let it go, Leander. She stood up straighter. I can find another familiar, if that's what it takes to save you. William lifted his head from what he was doing, sweat pouring down his face, his eyes wide. Did I hear that right? Raven bit her bottom lip and thought of Bella. Her face warmed just thinking of the humiliation. She shook her head. No, I can do this. I can find another familiar, maybe a dwarf goat or a dog. She choked out the words. You still need to learn this course so we can save you. William tied up another ring, smiling. You keep saying, Leander snorted, lifting his head to the sky. I don't take orders. I don't know how many other ways I can explain this to you. You were this close to getting your wings clipped. You need to go over this wall, not through it, not around it, over it. She floated her hand in the air as if she was riding an air current. Over. Now let's try it again. No familiar? Raven shut her eyes for a moment, but shook her head. No familiar. That should have your choice. That should have been your choice all along. At least that one. I'm sorry. Raven stepped out of the way and Leander stared down the wall. You ready? Go, she shouted. Leander charged into the wall and threw his tail at it, slapping it violently and sending it backward. From a distance, William laughed. No, Raven charged in again. That's not over. She put her face in her hands. Do you really not understand what I'm trying to say? Leander sat down on the ground, his tail slapping the dirt. Little girl, you know nothing. Raven set up the wooden wall once again, hoisting it high and unfolding the kickstands that kept it vertical. The design of the wall was simple, but clever, and Raven appreciated the work that went into it. I can't keep doing this, Leander. I've set this thing up dozens of times now. I don't know what to say anymore. I'm out of patience. I'm out of ideas. Come stand by me. She waved to him. The tired beast groaned as he rose to his feet slowly and lumbered toward her, assuming the same position that he'd been in countless times that day. Raven shook her head. How can I say this differently? It's just a wall. What part don't you understand? Leander stared deep into her eyes and spoke through gritted teeth. I don't know. William dropped down to the ground and stood to the side. He does listen to you. You're just missing something. You've got more control over him than any of us had, he shouted. Try it again. Raven tilted her head to the side. Grandpa is always saying the problem is part of the solution. That means whatever we need must already be here. A light went on in her eyes and she smiled. Wait here. Gladly, growled the dragon. Raven took off at a run and charged at the 12-foot wall, but she quickly realized that the combination of height and her already battered body ensured the task would be impossible for her. She clawed, jumped, and tried to get a toehold in anywhere, her red ponytail swinging down her back. She dropped back down to the ground and stood back. Leander stirred and stood up, watching her walk back toward him and turn, running at the wall as fast as she could. She reached out for the scrap wood and the thin ledges and narrow spots for any finger holds. She made it halfway up the wall before her fingers began to cramp. Her left hand slipped and the wood scratched her arm as her body twisted wildly. Still, she hung on with the one hand. Her fingers dug into the wood. Leander snorted and ran to the wall, ducking his head and catching her on his snout, lifting her up to the top of the wall. Damn, whispered William, watching in amazement. That girl. Shocked, Raven put her hands out on the scaly snout and turned till she could look into the large eye of the dragon. She smiled and looked back at the top of the wall, jumping off his snout and hoisting herself over the top of the wall, landing neatly down on the ground on the other side. The force of the landing made her injured knee buckle for a moment, but she shook it off and limped to the other side where Leander was waiting for her. See? She dusted off some dirt from her pants. Thank you, she said, her hands on her hips, still smiling. You have it now, right? Leander grunted at her. You're not listening to me, are you? Raven looked puzzled, but pointed to the wall. The frustrated dragon unleashed a fireball that engulfed the entire wall in flames. The dry wood burned quickly, leaving Raven to stare at it helpless. William tied off the last of the rings on the test course and stood in the distance, watching the hurdle burn. Yeah, still a dragon. Raven stared off into the distance, waving to Leander to follow her. She led him back to his pen without saying another word. He dutifully stepped in, and she closed the gate. Defeated, she sat on the ground outside his pen, leaning up against the fence. Giving up so soon? William asked with a smirk as he approached. I'm too tired to argue with you. Mind if I sit down? It's your ranch. Actually, it's my father's ranch. I just work here. He plopped down next to her and folded his hands on his knees. You want to know something that won't make sense to you? Sure, I'll add it to the long list. You have more control over that dragon than anyone has ever had. He pointed at Leander with his thumb. I know he's not scaling the wall, but he's lining up like you asked him to. You just led him back here to his pen without a leash. Raven smirked, staring blankly at the ground. I didn't even realize I forgot to put the leash on him. Some of my best trained dragons don't do that well. You've got remarkable control over him. He is paying attention to you. Then why are we failing? Why am I failing him? Raven shook her head. I'm out of time here. How can he know exactly what I want him to do and still not do it? He was able to help me over the wall. He elbowed her. The same reason you don't do things that people want you to do. He doesn't want to do it. You're right. That makes no sense. He knows that he's headed to the valley if he doesn't. Doesn't matter, Raven. If he doesn't feel like doing it, he's not going to do it. It's as simple as that. Training a dragon is more than just telling it what to do. Oh, really? Do tell. She rested her head back and closed her eyes. He took a deep breath. You're trying to force it. It's just your nature. You see something and you want to solve it, so you go for it. When you're training a dragon, it's a totally different scenario. It's not just about how to get them to listen to you. It's about how to get them to connect with you. Raven opened her eyes. I thought I already had a connection. Yeah, the beginning of one, but you don't have enough trust. That's the big difference. If you can't trust each other and let go of everything else, you'll never teach him. You guys have to be a team, not just him taking orders from you. Tell him that. It's not my job. William rose to his feet. I'm not avoiding it because I don't want to help you. I can't do it. I can't make that dragon listen to you. It won't work that way. The only person that can do it is you. You just have to figure out how to do it. Did you mean what you said about finding another familiar? Raven hung her head and pinched the bridge of her nose. You were right. It can't be about me. William let out a laugh. Can you say that one more time? I was what? Raven nudged him. You were right. Maybe that's where I start to trust. I can let go of Leander as my familiar, even if it means I lose my spot at Fowler. William nodded. And he gets clipped and sent to the valley. Look, just let it go for now. Go home and get your mind on other things. I'm sure you have spells to study or potions to mix. There will be an opportunity to develop it naturally. He started to walk away. Sorry about your wall, she called out to him. He waved his hand. Better the wall than the whole course. She smiled and pulled herself to her feet. She pressed her face against the fence, staring at the resting dragon. I don't know if this is worth anything to you, but I'm not giving up. I want to. I really do. But I won't do that to you. I know that I can help you save yourself. I know that you can work with me. You can be an ungrateful asshole about it all you want. This you and me, is going to work. I'll die trying if I have to. Leander listened to her closely, resting his head on his front paws. I want to believe you. Raven pulled her head up, her eyes wide. That's a place to start, Leander. I'll take it. On the way home, Raven took a detour, heading back to her spot on the wall of the city. She climbed the soaring wall using a well-worn set of finger holds, not looking down until she reached the top. She took a seat on the wide top, her legs hanging over the side outside of the city. She looked out over the lush green grass blowing in the wind as the sun continued to get lower in the sky, bathing it in an orange glow. Beautiful, she muttered, even if those are dangerous lands. Enjoying the view? Raven spun around to see her friend Henry smiling back at her, standing on the far side of the wall. I'm surprised you made it up here, she sneered. You usually struggle too much on a perpetually full stomach. He patted his flat stomach. Hey, growing boy needs fuel. I'm like a furnace shoveling in wood. She snorted. Accurate depiction. What are you doing up here? I come up here more than you think, girl, he laughed. I just needed a break from all this academy work. I broke Mom's favorite drug trying to make it levitate. She looked like she could use a break from yelling at me. I can help you with that one. Grandpa taught it to me when I was 6. I knew I could count on you. What are you doing up here? Wondering how I will face the school without a familiar. I told Leander it was his choice, and I gave up on the idea of his being my familiar. And I still need to save the same dragon. I don't know how I'm going to make this happen. He scoffed at her. Since when are you intimidated by anything? Come on, it's just a dragon. You know how to handle any situation. You always have, Raven. Do you remember when that goat busted loose a couple years ago? Raven stared out at the horizon, pursing her lips. Yeah, Jerry. Henry nodded. Jerry. Talk about an animal with a death wish. The way you told it, that goat spent more time trying to squeeze out of his pen than he did hanging out at the ranch. Full-time occupation. Put him back, he waited till I left and made another break for it. She smiled, rubbing her nose. I have no clue why. Like he was escaping a prison or something. One day he gets out and gets caught up in a briar patch almost a mile away from the ranch. Henry came and sat next to her and looked out over the open prairie that led to the distant, dense woods. You followed his bleats and found him beat up, scratched up, and stuck, and he was being circled by, what was it? Raven's eyes widened at the memory. A Vigretti panther, size of a pony. He nudged her with his shoulder. I don't know about you, but Vigretti panthers scare the piss out of me. Their paws are bigger than my face. One of their claws could probably run right through my midsection and cut me in half. They're even scarier in person. He lowered his voice. You didn't use your magic to save him, did you? Nope. I was younger then and not used to whipping out spells. I didn't even really think about it. Henry smirked. You could have left the goat. She cleared her throat. No way. I never leave an animal behind. Then there was something about Jerry that always appealed to me. Little spitfire, just like you. And how did you get him out of there? I used my slingshot. I always carry when I get that far from the house. One stone after the other. He laughed. Best story ever. You fought off a mountain panther with just a slingshot to save one goat. You did that without thinking. So why in hell are you doubting your ability to overcome training a dragon? Raven continued, staring off in silence. You're going to let a dragon take you down? Here's what will happen. You're going to get enough control over a dragon to get him through that course. Either you're going to crush it, or it'll be an unmitigated disaster. She cocked an eyebrow. Is this supposed to be an encouraging conversation? He shook his head. You're trying to do something new and scary. You're swinging for the fences. I still need to find a familiar. Henry swatted at the air. Don't give up on the dragon just yet. That story's not over. You really want to see me bring a dragon to school, don't you? He wrinkled his forehead. I want to see Bella's face. You'll be a legend, even if you can just get a dragon through the gates of the academy. Besides, it's not like you're royally embarrassing yourself doing basic magic. What now? Maxwell and I haven't exactly been setting the familiar world on fire. I almost turned him into a pigeon this afternoon. I think he still has a few tail feathers, and it was in front of everybody. You want to talk about embarrassing? Raven laughed, patting him on the back. Yeah, but that's a common mistake. I'm sure people have made familiars into all kinds of things before. You almost made a frog fly. Some of these spells are so specific, it's tough to get through them without doing something stupid. Henry returned his gaze to the horizon. Well, I guess we both have issues then. I gotta get back to my house for dinner. You good? I'm fine. See you tomorrow. Don't fall on your ass climbing down. Man, one time that happened. Henry climbed down to head home, but Raven stayed on the wall, scanning the ground, half expecting to see something moving in the dimming light. She thought about Isaac and fire and Edward. That's still a puzzle I want to solve too. She couldn't shake the feeling of dread as she looked out at everything that stretched out in front of her. She squinted, peering in the distance, hoping to see something that would explain the feeling. To the east, she saw the flag of Satellite Ranch. I wonder if that's the one that was abandoned. She sat forward, leaning just as something stirred near the horizon. Dust rose up in a straight column. Blinking a few times, she kept her eyes fixed on the horizon. Something was crawling along the ground, but just as suddenly disappeared. She slapped the top of the wall. At least this baby here is here to protect us from whatever that is out there. She rose to her feet and walked to the edge to climb back down. Nothing to be afraid of except training a large red dragon. And that is Chapter 22. Tomorrow, Chapter 23 and 24. I hope, oh good, Mike, you signed up for pizza, good. So 5 people will win pizza delivered to their door on Friday, but everybody should come with their lunch and join us 1 p.m. Central Time. There's a Zoom link, and it's posted in all the fan groups, but if you can't find it, ask me, and we'll give it to you directly. I hope you all are having a good day. It's, week bazillion that we've been doing this, but we'll make progress, and we'll do it all together. And I'm going to get back to writing. There's so much Lyra to do, but it's all coming. And there's another goth drow. Thursday, Witches of Pressler Street 7 will be out. So if you've been waiting to finish your Witches of Pressler Street fix in the Terra Nobis universe, same universe as Finnegan and the Lone Valkyrie, Amina, it will be out on Thursday. So love you all. Take care. Keep writing to me. I will write you back. I particularly like pictures of what your view is from wherever you are sitting. And I will talk to you tomorrow.